Ahoy there, Lorcana fans. Ian here, and we are already hard at work practicing and testing so much of the Fabled Set 9 post-rotation format. Myself, Lindsay, and Gibby are already brewing decks. We're already practicing a ton, as well as the rest of our testing group has been helping us, really sort of try to test out which lists are surging, which of the new cards are worth including, and what decks are sort of taking a step back. When we first started testing, we decided to just focus on some of the decks that we felt would still be viable post-rotation. So we took, the concept of this video here is I'm going to show you 5 decks that were, staple decks in previous formats that I think hold on in this next format. Will they be the best? It's hard to tell yet, but if you already have a ton of these cards, this can be a great way to sort of play a Set 9 updated deck with maybe just a few new inclusions, but not have to go and hunt down tons and tons of the new, powerful cards, or just proxy them up and play with the cards you already have. So there are going to be a few new cards here, but they're not going to be like wholly new archetypes for the most part. So let's dive in here. First up, we have, of course, the ever-present Amber Steel, this is going to be the aggro version. It was very powerful last set, maybe not quite as strong as Steel Song, depending on what your local metagame looked like, but a very hard to beat deck in the right set of circumstances. Previously, it had a ton more early game removal. It was running the 1-drop Cinderella. It had Storm Rage on and Zeus sometimes, and it was just really hard to interact with early because it would just blow up whatever your first plays were. It can't do that as consistently anymore, though it sometimes can still, remove things in a pinch with Strength of a Raging Fire. But here, what we see is we're leaning heavier into the fact that the whole suite of removal for everyone else is also being dinged. So we have tons of sticky bodies that are hard to remove, and we're really excited about this new Tiana, as is a lot of people. Some people so excited about it that they're actually worried about it in the competitive metagame. Will it be too much? We will see. But the reason people are playing it is there's no more Brawl. There's no more Big Sisu. There's no more Muses. There's no more Zeus. A lot of the ways that Tiana was pushed out of the metagame, despite being a very powerful defensive card if she gets exerted, a lot of those things are gone. A lot of the efficient answers. So then people are left to respond inefficiently in many cases, which means you're able to, of course, bring out tons and tons of characters, refill your hands with Doc, and continue out. Some people are playing this with the new Aurora. I think that that's totally on the table. It'll be interesting to see if this deck needs it. This deck has a lot of great 2-drops. I don't think it necessarily needs to go all in on the Aurora, especially because there's just not a lot of other good princesses that we want to be discounting. So I was concerned that Aurora is going to feel too inconsistent because it means you'd have to have that Tiana in hand. Otherwise, it's not as good as, Rhino or Mulan, which would be the cards you might potentially cut for it. So this build is not leaning into the Aurora, trying to bring the Tiana in a turn early, but Tiana has been amazing, especially when you can follow it up with a powerful bodyguard like Pluto, or sometimes the 2-drop Prince can come out after it. Be Our Guest is honestly been very great here. We lost Rapunzel, but Be Our Guest can be awesome for helping us go dig deeper to find copies of Doc to then refill our hands. So it is not as good as Rapunzel, of course, but it does help fill the gap. I've also got one Desperate Plan in here. It just felt like the right number. I tried more. It felt like too much. One Desperate Plan is basically a 5th copy of Doc, which between that and Be Our Guest felt pretty smooth. Amber Steel is just, can you get the most out of every single card? A lot of people, when they play this, the biggest misplays I see are when people over ink. They ink too high, or they ink on a turn where they're not actually going to need that ink the following turn. So they might as well hold on to that card. Every card matters, and even more so now because you don't have Rapunzels to sometimes get you those amazing refill turns. You're living a little more on the edge, but of course, Tiana can really make for some big non-games if your opponent just can't find an efficient answer. So this is a really powerful deck. It's been sort of in our testing group the sort of the deck to beat. It's like the thing that, like, okay, we think something's good, let's run it against Amber Steel. And so this is the list that I've had the most success with so far, and I'm totally open to seeing this changing. This new Lilo, by the way, is really weird because normally this deck doesn't like to attack back, and I wouldn't even say that this is the best version for attacking back. A lot of people like the Calhouns. I am testing the more, bodyguard heavy version with the Prince, and you get to a certain point where there's too many uninkables between Doc, Tiana, the Prince, Calhoun, Desperate Plan if you're playing that, and of course Daisy, which is not going anywhere. So something's got to go. In this build, we're leaving the Calhoun out to just try to go even faster and protect our Tianas even more. But sometimes people just don't play around the idea that you will attack them back. They're so used to this deck just being turn everything to the right and pass, and Lilo being able to come down and buff up your little one-drop Mulan, which doesn't really present a questing threat, and just charge it into something can be really good. So we've had a lot of success with this list. It probably will change based on what the metagame is, as will most of these decks. We'll see, should Calhoun be in here? Is the Prince worth it? Do we try to fit Aurora in and find some other princess to filter in here? I don't know 100% yet, but nonetheless, you can play this deck right now as is. A lot of people already have most of these cards if they played, Amber Steel in the past. So why not just go for it? It's really strong as it is. You can make some of those tweaks, and I don't think it radically changes the matchups. So yeah, really cool list. Okay, so this is probably the one that is going to be. It's funny. This is almost entirely old cards, but the new card that's in it is a legendary, and so that might be a little hard for people to get early on. I mean, we've been playing with proxies. A lot of local leagues, if they're not running super official things, will be cool with proxies. So just ask. But Dumbo is awesome here. So. Blurple is Lindsay's baby, and we've been playing a ton with some of the new cards, and there's been a lot of things we've liked, and trying out a few things to replace old standbys. We don't have the Fox anymore. We don't have Crabs. And with all of these faster decks in the metagame, we've reintroduced one-drops to the list with Rafiki and Develop Your Brain, which is a funny one. I'm more attached to this than Lindsay is. But I really like the ability with a deck like this. I'm always a neurotic blue player who's like, I hate missing ramp. And so it's nice to be able to see like 2 more cards if you currently don't have ramp in your hand and you're like worried that you're not going to be able to find a Tipo or a Sail. At least Develop Your Brain on turn 1 lets you, get a couple cards deeper and hopefully find it. So Rafiki is fantastic. It's nice to undercurve and weave in. The Yelanas are interesting. I think I could see these. I like them for the body. I like a 2-questing body. I like to play Blurple, where I can kind of just match board state for board state and pressure through questing against certain decks that don't have as much like resource extension. But I can totally see these being Hypnotic Strengths, which kind of changes their role. Ultimately, Yelana / Hypnotic Strength is buff. The benefit for Yelana is that it has a body. The benefit for Strength is that it gets you a card, and also can sometimes pop Vanishes, which is the other thing in this list, which is interesting. I've been playing the Iagos because I just really like the ability to shut down other evasive decks, other purple decks that are playing out the genies. And Iago just being able to shut them down really conveniently and easily is nice. The downside is I think that people are slightly overreacting to Vanish right now, and playing a lot of little things like Improvise and green decks, obviously Hypnotic Strengths, stuff like that. Sometimes Fire the Cannons and Steel decks. So there's a lot of ways to pop Iago. If you are worried about that, you can kind of change the risk and hedge it in a different direction. I've liked and I've tested the 4-drop uninkable Scrooge McDuck. I've played a lot of that in Baja Blast and I really like just ramping into it. So in here, it kind of makes sense. And I mean, I don't know. It is the uninkables though, right? So it tacks on 4 more uninkables, which is not horrible. This deck would be at 13, and maybe you trim the big Elsa to get it down to 12. I don't know, but obviously you have to be a little bit more careful about getting stuck with uninkables than this build, which is only at 9. Thanks to the Iago. So Dumbo, though, obviously the Iago has more synergy with Dumbo because it's another evasive, so you can kind of just power draw through your deck. But yeah, it is. It's really good. I'm on 3 Into the Unknowns, but if Tiana decks are truly feeling like nothing is answering them, and they're running rampant, you probably need to go to 4 just because it is one of the cleanest answers in the game right now to Tiana. You can sing it with your 4-drop, knock it out, and then slam an Elsa or a Bell or whatever, start trying to clean up board. It's a pretty efficient answer to Tiana, and against those Tiana decks, like, you don't really have to worry about giving them an ink. That's not really a downside. Obviously Monstro exists to sort of be a pseudo board wipe in the right scenarios. We have a ton of card draw and resource extension between the Finders Keepers and the Annas. And then I do like Big Elsa. I am on a 4-1 split of Hades Big Elsa. There's just these board states in Fabled format are just going really wide. Everyone's just like playing recklessly because they don't, have to worry so much about, they don't have to worry about B preps. They don't have to worry about big Sisus. And so far, I've not found an under the sea deck that I, really like. So I am not, I am kind of high on this Elsa being able to come down and prevent lethals in key moments, or just buy yourself an entire turn by locking some things down. Also, obviously, with the shift component coming in, there's a little bit less evasive counter in the metagame, so it's not like if you play your Elsa on 5, it's not like it's always going to be gobbled up by a pan Shadow Finder or something like that that's going to rush things in and remove it. So it's more likely you'll hit the shift more often. And then besides that, it's just strong value cards. Donald Duck is one that I really like. I've been playing this in pretty much every blue deck, and so I originally didn't have it in this, and then it just got filtered in because I've been playing it in red blue. I've been playing it in Baja Blast, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just getting a solid body that ramps again. I really like it. So this is an interesting list. I feel like there's a lot of ways that it could change and mold and whatnot. I kind of laid out those things, but Dumbo feels like it's going to push this over the edge. If I was a betting man and I had to put money on a deck to be the best deck in format, I think I'd put the money on this. I really do. I think that it has the tools, even if it's not in this build. I think it has the tools to deal with the Tiana decks, weirdly enough, despite it being a late game deck. And I think it's going to out control, it's going to outgrind a lot of the other late game decks that could pop up in the format, of course, barring any sort of, real, so far unseen, control or combo deck. So anyways, I really like Set 9 Blurple. I really think you guys will too. Not a lot changed, but there are some key differences. Okay, so I'm trying to coin Grurple. I just love Emerald Amethyst. Everybody calls it, either EA or GP tempo. So I think this deck, I think Emerald Amethyst may end up closer to an aggro deck, like closer to what it was like 3 sets ago. Just because I think that obviously the ability to have like Merfolks and White Roses and stuff like that to try to like race are pretty good. The downside will be, is it better than a steel based aggro? Can it outrace a Tiana deck that has access to ladies? And ladies kind of really break the math against this. So I instead am like, I've always been more of a mid-range tempo player, so I went into this. So far, I'm winning a lot of games, but I'm not blowing out any games. So that is, to be fair, how Emerald Amethyst felt last set as well. So it may be okay. It may be not a problem. The big problem with this build, and I say problem, it's the noticeable difference is that you went from having some of the best 3-drops in the game, whether you playing, the just straight, bounce package, right, with like Foxes and Crabs, whether you were playing the Diablos, whether you were even on the discard version with Princeton, you had great 3-drops, and now the 3-drops don't feel as good. You've got Lewis, you've got this Tinkerbell, which is sort of my solution to have a proactive play, right? Because Yolana's a reactive development, Lewis is a reactive. This 3-drop Anna is a sort of a, it's not really meant to go out on turn 3. So Tinkerbell is my solution. So you can kind of do like an oops all evasive, situation. You play an evasive 2-drop, you play an evasive 3-drop, you play an evasive 4-drop. Ha 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 ha. This 4-drop Genie here, it's funny. I guess I forgot to update this list. Give me 1 second. Boom. fixed. Haha. I had built a lot of these decks back before Dreamborn had updated, but now that it finally is updated, I've been missing where I've added, substitutes for new cards. But we've got the green genie in there now. Look and fly, Genie of the Lamp. So obviously, like, all of your 4-drops are evasive. You can Elsa or Magic Dispel evasive. So you can do the Oops All evasive if you think that they don't have clean answers to it. But of course, we're rocking some, really nice reactive tools as well, in the form of this Big Bell, in the form of Elsa. Of course, we have Pull the Lever, Wrong Lever. I've dinged Wrong Lever 1 copy just because you don't have the Shift Diablo anymore to dump Pull the Lever into the discard pile. I'm also interested in testing Bobby Zimmerowski as a way on 1 to put the Pull the Levers in the discard pile depending on the matchup. The problem is you don't always want to do that. In slower matchups, you want to be hard casting Pull the Lever at some point to draw those cards. And so, it's tough. We will have to see whether it becomes necessary to turn our Wrong Levers into true removal instead of just a bounce. But to make up for that, I've got 3 copies of Mother Knows Best, which has been an MVP card for me so far. I went from 2 copies to 3. I've even considered going to 4. It's uninkable, but it has always been a very strong card in these tempo decks, in lower power formats, right? And you have some great opportunities to set up some really cool plays. So, for instance, that is why I am playing this 1-drop Cogsworth. So we've got these. First off, these are the 7 1-drops you want to play against, fast decks, right? You got the Rafiki, you got the Royal Guard. That's pretty obvious. The Cogsworth, though, sets up some awesome plays with a lot of the, shenanigans characters that we have, right? It's really nice to be able to rush in this Genie, right? Which is going to be able to come into play, like swing onto something. There's a lot of things with 1 power, like docks and stuff like that. Pop into that, buff it up by 2, buff the rest of your stuff up by 2. And then theoretically, if you really need to, on a future turn, you can either use Magic Dispel or Mother Knows Best in the same way that you would play like a snake or, a fox or something. Bring that Cogsworth back into hand and replay it to now, let's say, rush in your, little Diablo and put 3 damage on something. Your Bell, put 4 damage on something. You can kind of see the utility here with Cogsworth, even sometimes going like Rafiki plus Cogsworth. That's a 2-ink play where it lets you rush a 3-power unit. That can be pretty cool. So obviously for grindier matchups, we have the library in here to help us draw through cards. It does not have as much card draw as before, obviously, because we lost our beloved friends on the other side. But I'm really happy with this list. It is very flexible. Without as much removal, you can really run away with the game with evasives if they can't find it. Those steel decks especially. This deck is susceptible, pretty darn susceptible to Under the Sea. The problem, not a lot of people are playing it. I have not seen an Under the Sea deck that I feel like is scary enough to, change the way I build the list. So there's some interesting tech options I can see. I think if somebody can solve the turn 3 conundrum, which I think it may just turn this Tinkerbell may just turn into a stat stick character, either a 4/3 or a 3/4, just something to roll out that matches well into the threats in the game. But since we don't know that yet, we're rocking an evasive here just as an extra proactive play. So yeah, that is my set 9 Grurple. Stay tuned. This is one of my favorite color combinations, so I'm going to be tinkering with it quite a bit. I think the big takeaway here is I really love this Cogsworth. I really love this 1-drop Cogsworth. Turning, my Genie into Rush has just been game breaking for a lot of opponents. So anyways, yeah, moving on. All right, so Amethyst Steel. This is a shout out to Erin in our testing group. This is the list that she has been working really hard on. We've done a ton of testing with it. I think it's pretty impressive, and it's got some tools in there that I've not seen a lot of other people using, but that have been really effective at dealing with some of the big threats that we know are in the metagame. So of course, this is a slower mid-rangey build, right? I've seen the aggro builds running around. I do think there's some cards that could genuinely be argued could be in this deck. Things like the 5-drop Namari, but ultimately, the things that are in here are all in here for a reason. And so far, I've been really liking where it's at, and it is a pain to play against, especially when you're playing some of the more aggressive decks. This deck just has the tools. So Obviously, on turn 1, we've got the 3-power Challenger units, so the Rafiki and the Captain Hook, which are fantastic, especially going up against things like a Daisy Duck when you can follow it up with Tiny Mim. I know, it seems crazy, but Tiny Mim has actually been fantastic to sort of either curve out on 2 to be able to take out a Daisy that's been questing in your face and really put that deck behind, or curve out later in the game to sort of fix the math. You'll notice the new 3-power or the new 3-drop Lilo that gives the +2 to everything, not present in here. That's because this Tiny Mim is sort of serving as a less powerful version of it. But it is actually coming down a little earlier and giving you sort of that power spike up to 4 power that a lot of the cards like hitting into a Tiana, hitting into a Daisy, there's a lot of things that want you to hit that 4 power mark, and you don't necessarily need that extra if you are playing the Rafiki, Captain Hook, Calhoun, etc. Obviously, if you're trying to deal with like a big 5 power or a 5 willpower Pluto bodyguard, right? Well, Cobra and Lawrence, your 3-drop plays, both go up to 5 thanks to Tiny Mim. So anyways, Tiny Mim's been really cool. I'm excited to keep messing with it. Obviously, we're running the Dock engine. We've got Strength of Raging Fire for removal along with Fire the Cannons, but this is rocking the Tinkerbell shift line. It's funny, like some of the best players I've heard are pretty divided on the Tink line. I think the reality is that like when you don't know what the metagame is, I think it's really hard to turn this setup down. In my mind, just the threat of playing out that 3-drop Tink changes what everybody else is doing. And it is sort of a powerful catch-all card. It's great to play on 6. It has an immediate impact. Dealing 1 damage to everything is usually, in most matchups, pretty good. But obviously you can ink it. You don't have to shift it on 4 just because you have the lineup. Like, they might be playing around the Tink, so you can just ink it or sit on it and make them think you don't have it and shift it on a future turn. We do have the ability to undercurve things pretty easily because you can just refill your hand with Dock. Genie, of course, is the other 4-drop play, so a lot of times it's either you're shifting the Tink or you're playing the Genie or you're undercurving like a 3 and a 1 or a 2 and a 2, right? We have the Elsa Bell, obviously, between the bulky bodies, right? There's a lot of things with 3+ power, right? We've got the Mim, we've got the Dock, we've got the Cobra, we've got the Lawrence, we've got the Bell, we got the Elsa, we got the big Tink. Like, that's a lot of things with more than like 3 or more willpower, so you're actually going to be able to put damage on them, shift it over, and I've seen a lot of games just end on the first bell that comes down and takes out a card that they just played, right? Takes out a 4-drop green Genie with 3 defense, takes out a any sort of the like 3 willpower questers and stuff like that on the steel aggro decks and things like that. It's obviously you have the libraries in there for a little bit more card draw. The card that I'm really interested in, that's kind of the tech spot that I know Aaron's been playing around with, is this 3-drop Dumbo. Just a way to get evasive into play. Which of course you can buff up with things, right? The Dumbo can go up to 3 with the Mim. But more importantly, being able to like play a Calhoun on 2, your opponent is like playing, an evasive heavy list and they quest in your face with it and then saying, I'm going to play my Dumbo, buff up the Calhoun and take out your Pegasus or take out your Go-Go or your 2-drop Diablo or whatever those, especially the green decks are playing, a ton of evasive, or an enemy 3-drop Tinkerbell in the right circumstance, right? Like you really can catch people off guard or defensively give yourself evasive. Okay, your Rafiki took something out and lived. It took 1 damage, maybe took out a Dock. Slap down the Dumbo, give that Rafiki evasive. Now they're not getting that free trade into its 0 strength body. So yeah, this is a really cool list, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with it. I know Aaron is going to probably continue to iterate a bunch more times, but having played a little bit more of it myself at this point, maybe I'd be interested in finding like 2 more 1-drops just for a little bit slightly more consistency. But you do have Fire the Cannons in the right situation that can just be a serviceable 1-drop against a faster deck. So that is the Amethyst Steel midrange we've been testing and having some good success with. So hopefully it's useful for you too. All right, so for the last deck that I've got here for you, this is probably the most far-fetched. I had to include red-blue because there's a lot of red-blue players out there, both in my local community and elsewhere, that are kind of dejected, right? That was their color, and it's been their color for a long time because red-blue has been so good for so long. This is going to feel a lot different than old red blue. I think that's the biggest stretch to say that this is the reimagining of red blue, but it is still a Sharks deck through and through. So it's not going to feel like the DKP list. However, it is still leaning heavy into that high action count, recalling the actions with the Maui. And you're actually able to sort of pressure lore and keep pace through that mid game. It does feel less like a control deck. I think that it's going to be slower than most things, but I think that, you know, in many ways, I think it's going to feel faster than Blurple. You know, I think it's going to, I don't think it has the best matchup into the super, super fast aggro, so you may have a hard time with that. Obviously, no board wipes is kind of a tough pill to swallow, right? But against anything that's not true aggro, this deck can do some truly gross, broken things. This is a deck that I have been personally working on. I know that there's some people trying out some of these things, but I'm sure someone out there has posted, you know, a version of this. But this is something that's been, you know, my own testing and creation process, and this is the list that I've landed on. I think that there are some gaps in it. I think that, you know, in future sets, this could genuinely be, you know, an S tier deck if the right circumstances are met. But for now, I do think that it's the kind of deck that can bully other mid-range decks. And if you get the right start, and it's a start that's hard for people to deal with for the same reason that it's hard for them to deal with Tiana's, if you get the right start, you can just run away with the game in the most broken, you know, set of circumstances. So basically, the way you're doing it is you are playing Tipo or Sail on turn 2 and ramping ideally into Robin Hood. This is where it's like a little bit iffy. If you don't hit Robin Hood, it's harder. It's still winnable, but it's harder because your other option is Beagle Boys, and this is a solid card. Beagle Boys is really nice here. Obviously, getting to rush in a Maui Half Shark can be just disgusting, but you can also rush in other things either later in the game or immediately on turn 5. You can rush in, you know, Donald Duck. It does have some weird anti-synergy with Lilo because Lilo has to be in play for you to then give it rush and resist, but still being able to rush something is nice. But the real spice is when you hit Robin Hood on 4, really on your turn 3 at 4 ink. Holy cow, it is disgusting because Robin Hood has this beautiful suite of actions to pull off. And if you start to really break down what's in there, you're realizing that you're often questing with Robin. And if you hit any of these 12 cards, All Is Found, Pirate's Life, or Down in New Orleans, you are truly breaking open the game. If you hit that Pirate's Life, you have immediately stalled their aggressive strategy, right? Usually bought yourself an entire turn. If you hit All Is Found, you're immediately ramping up to 6 so that you can ink and play a Hades the following turn. If you hit Down in New Orleans, you can sometimes break the game open completely and just win the game on the spot by playing an early Maui, an early Robin, even hitting like a Lilo or a Donald, especially Lilo, so you can ready it up and protect it from challenges the following turn. Now, obviously, you've quested on your turn 4 with Robin. If you have a Lilo in hand, it's an amazing card to just slam down, ready up that Robin, and just continue to get so much incredible free value in the following turns. So obviously, and just for anybody who's not familiar with Robin Hood Sharpshooter, yes, in fact, you can ramp the cards that you put into the discard pile from Robin, because the entire text of Robin has to resolve before you can play this card for free. So it's in the bag. It's similar to how Ursula Deceiver of All went, but you know, you're going to finish the action here, which will put the rest of the cards that you did not select into the discard pile, and then you play this card or whichever card you pulled for free. So if it was All Is Found, you can put the two of the cards that you just milled into the discard pile into your Inkwell face down and exerted. So really, really cool ability there. You know, I think that there are some things you can do to make this more consistent, right? Down in New Orleans is a little bit of a gimmick, right? I think that if they had reprinted Lady Tremaine or Madame Medusa, this would just be insanely broken. Obviously, the bummer is that it can't hit Hades or Maleficent. So you could do some things where, like, you could put in, like, the Rush Stabbington brother or things like that instead of either Maleficent or Hades. But for right now, I found that just having 8 top-end threats, ramping to them is not hard. Just 8 top-end threats that you can, you know, vision into and remove something and just be able to bully your way through the late game with just, you know, single target removal after single target removal, pull the actions back with Maui, etc. Is pretty worth it. So far, this has been my build. Let me know what you think in the comments. Try it out. I guarantee you'll hit that Robin dream. And you'll never want to play another deck. This is one of the most explosive, crazy decks to play in this format. And barring hyper aggro, I think that it can beat anything else. So hey, that might be healthy for a control deck like this. If this could beat aggro, that would be a really scary thing. So let me know what you think about my Rampant Robin deck. I'm really proud of it. There's still work to be done on it. This is a 4x15, but I think there's some nuance that needs to be worked in. I have been testing 5 or 6 other cards, but nothing has been so matchup changing that I felt like it was really worth presenting here. Dive in, y'all. Let me know what you think. And yeah, get in those comments. If you like the video, consider liking the video, and subscribe, because we're doing a little bit more content here on the channel of long form with Fabled, but we also have a podcast, a weekly or probably soon to be bi-weekly podcast of Lindsay and I that's focused on the local competitive scene and just, providing resources to new players, new player, budget-friendly decks, how to teach new players, how to teach kids, things like that are the topics that we tend to cover. So if that's your thing, or you have a friend that is trying to get a local league started, we have so much experience with that. We answer listener questions, so jump in there and let us know. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you on the next one.